Hello, you guys. Today I'm going to show you a little more in depth of how to use Blender. Basic things for now. Maybe later we'll go over some more detailed stuff. But when you first open Blender here, you can either click General or just click in the background. Your scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Left click, select objects. Right click to open a UI with different options, and middle mouse, press it in and move, and you will rotate. Second, I will turn on here. You'll be able to see I can drag select multiple objects with the left click, or I can middle mouse and rotate. If I hold shift and middle mouse, I can pan side to side. You can also use this tool right here. Pan side to side, left click on it. Now you can also line up on a specific axis. I only have 2 axis visible by default, and so will you, but you can enable it by clicking this drop down. See? You'll then see all 3 axes. You have your Y, your X, your Z axis over here. They're color coordinated and it shows direction. Where this circle is relative to this center point is positive on the axis. The opposite direction is negative. So if I move this, up here in the corner you can see my position I'm moving to. If I move this, you can see if I go this way, up here in the corner, if I go this way it's a positive number, if I go this way it's a negative number. So whatever direction this symbol is your positive direction on that axis. Now you can line up with a specific axis by clicking on any one of these dots. If I click on this dot, I'm viewing the y-axis directly straight down the y-axis. I can see the x and the z, but not the y. If I click on the x, I can now see y and z, but not x. And same with when I click z. There's hotkeys for this. If I look at this from any view, if I press 7, it will lock me to the z-axis. If I press 1, it will lock me to the y-axis. If I press 3, it will lock me on the x-axis. Now these are the numpad 1, 3, and 7. Now, right now, I'm in a mode called object mode. You can see it up here in the corner. This is the mode that you're currently in. This allows you to select an object, which are also listed over here. Now, this is my light, which I do not need. I can delete this light. I do not need the camera either. I can delete the camera. I can do that by pressing the delete key, or I can select both. I can hit the delete key, or I can hit the X key and it will bring up a list of options. In object mode, there's only delete. If I were to go into edit mode, I have to have an object selected. Then I can go to edit mode. Now I can change this geometry any way I want. Now, if I were to delete right now, I'm using vertex selection. So I can select a single vertex on this, or if I hold shift, I can select multiple, or deselect. I can also hold shift and drag select to add more, or hold control, drag select to remove some. Now, on the left side, you have a toolbar. If this is ever not visible, you can press T, toggle it on and off. You can also drag it out if you'd like to see the actual name of the. Now, selection box is selecting like this. You can also cycle it. You're right next to here, the tooltip. On the bottom of the tooltip, the shortcut cycle is W. If I hit W, I'm now a selection circle, which you can't drag select anymore, but you can hold down your left mouse and just scroll over things. It will add to them. Now, press W again. You have a selection lasso, which allows you to kind of draw an area to select. Select again. You can use tweak. I have no idea what this does, to be completely honest. Oh, it looks like it grabs. Just immediately grabs, which is kind of cool, but I don't think I'll ever use that. Control Z is your undo. Control Shift Z is redo. Go. Now, I typically only use the box select. Now you have a cursor too, which typically you won't use a whole lot, but you can move this cursor around. It's usually used for adding in new objects. It'll spawn centered on that cursor, but it can also be used for up here. Okay, so up here you have, this is when you move or rotate objects, there is a point that they will be centered at for pivoting, usually on rotation, but sometimes the direction you want to move, like global, would be moving along these global axes. Local would be a local axis to this object. So if I were to rotate this object like this and have local on when I go to edit and I move these along the Z axis, Z is not the global Z. It is a local Z value. Because this object is rotated slightly, Z is no longer straight up and down, it's kind of at an angle. So moving it along the Z axis looks like this. But if I change this global, moving along the Z axis is straight up and down globally. These are more advanced, so you won't really use them probably till later, but it is good to know that they exist. There is also normal. Now, if I move along the normal, it's the same as the local Z, but not if I move along the normal of this space. If I move along the normal of this space, local Z isn't the same anymore. It is directly up from this space, relative. So this one would come kind of towards me in this direction. Now, I'm going to undo some things, get this back to where it's supposed to be. There we go. You also have gimbal. This is going to be relative to your perspective. So if I rotate right now, it's rotating based off where I'm looking. I've never really used that one. Sorry, that's not view, is that one. View is relative to where you're looking. Weird. I tend to pretty much stay global for the most part. Every now and then I'll use normal. But over here, this is going to be your transform pivot point. Right now, we're on median point. Median point would be the center of this object, which is also the origin, orange dot. If I were to move this up here, keep it on median point, but scale, it's still going to be centered from this origin. If I instead do individual origins and scale, oh, I'm in object mode, that won't work the same. In edit mode, scaling be from the center of the object. Now if I do 3D cursor, it's going to be scaling from the 3D cursor. There's also individual origins, which on a single object won't make a difference. It'd be the same as median point. But if I had 2 of these and I scale, you can see that each one individually scales from its center. But if I do median point, it's going to be the center of these 2 objects. And then you also still have 3D cursor, which will be transforming the pivot point right here. And then bounding box center, which is similar to median point, but if I were to, say, duplicate this to this way, and then move it here, move it over like this, the bounding box center actually would be the same in this case. Let me do 1. That bounding box center. Okay, if you look, the bounding box center is right about here. Median point is probably, yeah, the median point is going to be over here. It goes off volume. So it is slightly different. But same with this, if I do individual origins, each one is an individual scale. I typically median point for the most part. Individual origin does come in handy though. Now, other things you can do here. In edit mode, we have your different tools. You have a move tool. Your move tool here is little arrows that you can drag around and move your object around. You can also select circle, which will allow you to move freely on all axes. If you select one of these boxes, it will only move along the 2 axes it's tied to. So this one is locked on the X. It will not move on X, but it moves on Z and Y. This one is locked on Y. It moves on X and Z. And this one is locked on Z. It moves on X and Y. Now, the hotkey for this is G. So if I have select box and I press G, I can move around freely, like holding onto the circle. Or if I press G and then while I'm moving, if I press X, I will lock to the X axis, Y locks to Y, and Z locks to Z. If I want to exclude one single one, just like selecting the boxes, instead of hitting an individual key, I would hit G and then hold Shift and select the axis I don't want to use. If I don't want to use Z, I would press Shift Z. Now I can move on X and Y, but Z does not get changed. Or Shift X will exclude moving along the X axis. Shift Y, I can move on Z and X, but not Y. Now, when using the move tool, this is just like pressing G and then hitting Y to lock to the Y. This is the same as pressing G. And this is the same as Shift X, because I'm excluding the X. Now you also have rotate, which is the same scenario. The white bar is relative to your view, so it will rotate around whatever angle you're looking at it. The blue arrow is rotating on the Z-axis. Green arrow is rotating on the Y-axis. Or, sorry, semicircle here. Green semicircle. And then the red one is for the X-axis. Now you can also hotkey this by pressing R for rotate. Just like the move tool, the single press of the hotkey is same as using the white option on the tool. So this is view relative rotation. Now, if I wanted to lock a specific axis, same scenario. If I want to rotate on Y, I would press Y. Now it's rotating on Y, X, Z. If I want to exclude one, same thing, Shift Z, Shift Y, Shift X. The only thing is, this doesn't really rotate well. You can't really exclude only a single axis. It will generally only lock to the single axis. Now, you also have a scale tool. This allows you to shrink and enlarge based on a certain axis, or all axes at the same time, or two axes only. Just like the other tools, Scale's hotkey is S. Any of these tooltips will show you the button to press for the hotkey. The shortcut Shift Spacebar will open a menu, and it's basically a smaller version of this menu, and it'll appear anywhere you're at. But if you open this menu and look at these are the hotkey buttons to press. Move is G, G for grab, R for rotate, S for scale, T for transform. All these have their own hotkey. So for scale, press S, all axis, X, Y, Z, Shift Z, so only X and Y. Shift X is only Y and Z. Shift Y is only X. Now the transform tool is a combination of the previous three tools. You have move, rotate, and scale. This has all. The arrows are move, the boxes are scale, and the semicircles are rotate. Now I do not actually know what the white thing does. Oh, okay. So it doesn't look like you can scale on all axes. It looks like you can move on all axes, you can rotate on the view axis, and you can individually move each one with this tool. Or you can scale each one with this tool. Or rotate one. But it does not look like you can scale all of them with this tool. Now, you can annotate things if you want. This allows you to just pretty much write in 3D space. Just exists there. So if you're doing something and this is like, I don't know, front, right? That don't work right. I don't know what the distance is for it. I don't know how that works. But it is something you can do if you want. You can also measure things, which is best done in a very locked view. So I can click here, drag to here. Oh, this is about 2.1 meters. So that ain't. Or we can diagonally measure. I wonder if I can snap. I don't know if I can snap. Yeah, looks like I can. Go. 0.9041 meters diagonal. 0.10553. So I didn't finish this up here, I guess. Up here we have what's called a snapping tool. This toggles it on and off. And this allows you to select which type of snapping you want. Now, if I take this vertice and I move with the G key to this vertice, it snaps it to that vertice. Because right now, I have vertex snapping on. If I instead change this to edge snapping, I can snap it to this edge. It will move directly along this edge wherever I place it. For this edge, this edge, any edge. There's also face snap, which pretty much this entire face right here can be snapped to anywhere. There are other ones in here that I will let you figure out. I've never really used them, so I'm not going to explain them. But typically, for the most part, I only use Vertex. I don't really use anything else. Vertex pretty much does everything I need. Can set it up to increment 2, and can do absolute grid snapping, which will move incremented values. I'm not 100% sure where you set that value at, but I pretty much just use Vertex personally. Also, I do not know how to delete. No, never learned that. Huh. Yeah, I don't know how to do that. There we go. That's how we delete it. Okay. I learned something new too. Fuck it. So, switching between object and edit mode, there's a hotkey for this as well. There's the tab key. You can tab between the two modes pretty easily. Now, in edit mode is the only time you can really manipulate an object. In object mode, you can move it, can scale it, and you can rotate it, but it will always pivot from this origin point. So, depending on where you have the origin, is where it's going to rotate. Now, you can also, in object mode, you can right-click and choose that origin. You can move your geometry centered around your origin, like that, or you can also change it where the origin goes to the center of your geometry. Now my origin is over here. Or you can set the origin to your 3D cursor. Now it's where my 3D cursor is located. If I put my 3D cursor over here, set origin to 3D cursor, now my origin is here. Now if I rotate, it's going to rotate from that 3D cursor. I want to, if you ever need to reset your 3D cursor, hit Shift S. There's a cursor to world origin option, which will send it back here. Then if you need to, you can set your origin back to the 3D cursor. That way it's at world origin. Another way to set it back at world origin, you right click. Sorry, not right click. Control A is apply. Apply lots of things. But I typically apply all transforms, and what this does is it resets your location back to 0, 0, 0. So my origin is my location. If I apply location, you'll see the origin back at world 0, and it shows 0, 0, 0. If I were to rotate this, you can see I have odd rotations. Hitting Control A, I can reset the rotation. It stays in the same place, but now its rotation is 0, 0, 0. These are values that you want to have on your object. You don't really want to have them moved around or rotated around, especially scaled. Scaling can be an issue. So if I scale this right now, you can see my scale is 5.591 on all axes. I can also apply the scale. It stays the same, but now it is a 1, 1, 1 scale. This is best. This, please. not having a good scale, or especially having a negative scale, can cause some major issues, especially in mapping. So always Control A, apply. I just apply all transforms first. Makes it easier for me. Now another thing, you can delete object, right? No more objects. We have nothing to manipulate. Up here you have an add option. You can add in different kinds of meshes, whatever kind of mesh you want. Add in curves. These are things that can be used for a variety of different things. I like to use them for making splined meshes. Make things like quarter pipes or roads or rails. I don't know, lots of objects. There's surfaces. Never dealt with any of these. Don't know what they are, or the metal wall. You can add in text, floating text to do things. There's skeletons, volumes, grease pencils. There's a lot of things in this that I'm not going to go over. But generally, this is how you would add something to your scene. One thing that may be used if you do any renders is sunlight. This is the angle at which the light is projecting. Up here in the right, you have different viewport modes. This is called wireframe. This shows just the edges of your object. This is the solid, which shows your object in a modeling standpoint. This one is a material. So if I had a material on here, such as, create one real quick. If I had a material on here, say I want it to red, right? Material view, I can see that, but in solid view, I cannot. I only see the solid color. Everything will be this color. Now, render view combines your material view with lighting and shadow data. Now you can watch as I change this light around. You can see the shadows change on the object. So this down close. Right. Now if you watch this, the shadows moving around. And that's only visible in render view. Here in material view, no shadows. Solid view, no shadow. And wireframe view, there's nothing shadows on. Now, this tool up here is proportional editing. An interesting tool. This turns it on and off, and this changes the type of proportion. This is a smooth one, so the closer to the place you have selected, the more it's going to affect it. The farther away, the less it's going to affect it. Sphere will be a pretty even effect. Root kind of tapered in a way. Versus square, you can kind of see how they affect, but I'll show you how they actually work. So with this object selected and in edit mode, if I select this one vertex and I go to move this one vertex, you can see right now it's moving by itself. If I turn on proportional editing with the smooth option set, it will smoothly move things within this circle that you. If you roll with your wheel, you can change the size of the circle. It made a nice smooth movement where it dragged things kind of evenly. If I change this to something like linear, it drags less smooth. It's an equal value the whole way. If you do sharp, it's going to be a little more worse than that one. But every one of these has its own use. Sphere. Weird. I don't know. There we go. So the size of your circle, it grabs everything within that circle and starts pulling it somewhat quickly. But I typically like to use smooth because it allows me to adjust where I need to adjust. Okay, I'm going to turn that off, turn snapping off. Over here, this is just turning on the visibility for certain things in your scene. Go through that list, figure out what you want to see and don't see. Turn off all meshes, curves, surfaces, turn off text, things like that. It makes it disappear in your view. This one right here is gizmo. It's like your move tool that I can't see right now. Why can't I? Oh, I didn't have anything selected. If I turn this off, you can't see the tool. So, yeah, these, the navigation ones. Your active tool is one that I had down there. Then your active object. I'm not sure what that's actually doing, to be honest. But this next one is more of things that you can see on your screen, different overlays. There's one that comes in handy that I use here. The majority of this I don't use. The statistics is nice to have. It'll show you things like how many polygons your object has. And then there's also face orientation. This is an important one for me first. This shows me two different values, either blue or red. Blue means that this is the outside face, meaning that this is the outside of an object. If I flip the normal, this is now red. If I were to bring this into Unreal or some other engine, this face would be invisible because you can't see the back of a face, you can only see the front of a face. So all these other pieces would be fine, but this part would be invisible. But if I were to look at it from the inside, I would see this one face and nothing else. Because the normal is flipped backwards. And that's what this face orientation does, is show you which way that everything is facing. Now, there are other tools that are very handy. A selects all. If you're in edit mode, it will only select all of the faces or vertices or edges. Whatever you have selected up here, vertice, edge, face, whatever you have selected, it will select all of them. Now, I believe it's Shift A. Nope. Control A. I don't know. Alt A. Yeah, Alt A. There we go. Alt A deselects all. Which also would be the same as just clicking right here. Like, click here, deselects everything. So however you want it. Now, you can do things like bevel. I'm going to do this on a box. Much easier to see what's going on, not a plane. Cube. Okay. So if I take an edge, one single edge right here, and I go to the bevel tool, if I drag this little circle here, you will see that the edge comes split into two edges. It creates a face from this edge. And while dragging, you can scroll your wheel to add more faces in. This is how you can curve objects, make them look nice and smooth. Be careful about how many faces you have. Where this looks blurry, or like you can see the edges and it's kind of ugly, if you right click on this in object mode, you right click and choose shade smooth, that gets blended. But right now, your sharp edges are blended too. We still want these to be sharp. We can actually go to this little green tool here. That is, this object has data that is stored for it. This is the data property. Under normals, you can auto smooth. Now you have sharp edges. You have not sharp edges. This is a smooth edge, right? You can also select this edge. You can individually select every one if you want by holding shift, or you can click one, hold control, and click the last one. It will select everything along the path. Or you can hold alt and it'll select a full loop. This is a loop right here. I don't want these two selected, so I'm going to deselect those. Control drag. Now, if I take those, actually, I do want all those. You want all those. Want all of these. No? Go. And this one. All these edges that I have selected should be sharp edges. They should not be smooth. Right? So right now they're smooth. You can't tell there's an edge. With them selected, you can right click, choose mark sharp. Now, if I shade smooth, that didn't work. Nice. Auto smooth. There we go. Shade auto. That's which auto checks this box for you. Which I don't actually think that the sharps need to be on there with it auto smooth. No, they don't. Yeah, well, that was a waste of time. Anyways, auto smooth right there. Handy tool. Makes things look a lot better. Now, you can also do something called inset face. So in edit mode, if I select face selection, choose this face, and drag. That is going the wrong direction. That's interesting. Oh, I'm beveling still. My bad. Thought I selected inset face. Now, I don't like using this tool specifically because I can never get it to move very much with the tool. So what I do is I use the hotkey, which is I. If I press I, inset the face, what this does is it creates a smaller face inside it. So now, with something like this, I can move it out to make it a triangle or a pyramid, right? A nice shape out of it. You can make some weird, interesting stuff like this. This is actually how I would create a pyramid in game. I would take a plane, and I would select the face. I would inset the face. But inset is not working right now for some reason. Why is inset not working? Go. Inset the face. And then I would just lift it up a little bit. Now I have a nice little pyramid I can create. And then using that bevel tool, I can select all these edges and I can round them out. So this is how I would create anything that needs detail. A little bit of beveling goes a long way. You do not need a whole lot of faces to smooth it out. You can see this looks pretty smooth. But if I were to take another plane here and inset the face again just the same, lift it up just the same, select the faces again, and bevel it, but this time like really increase the amount of curves. Yes, it does look smoother, but it also doesn't. It creates weird shapes. I can still shade auto smooth. It looks just as smooth as the other one did. But this one has a way higher poly count, which we don't need. This is extra performance draw that you don't really need. this does the same thing. This actually looks smoother to me than this. Now, there's this other tool called Loop Cut. I fucking love this tool. Let me delete all these real quick and add in a new cube. So this tool right here allows you to take a cut of an object that follows the entire loop. In this case, it's a loop of faces. These faces loop all the way around this object. And I can now select this edge. It will cut from this edge across the face to the next edge. And once you have your left mouse clicked in, you can drag this where you need it to be, or you can right click to make sure it stays in the center. So if you look at this now, it cut this object in half. If I lift this up, the exact center is what moved. This can also be done on sides. Now, one other thing you can do is you can change with this tool selected. Right here, we'll say number of cuts. You can say, I want 8 cuts. Wherever you go to cut, it adds 8 cuts immediately. Now, another thing you can do is, if you don't know how many cuts you want, stick with 1. Okay? As long as you don't do anything else after placing this, down here, and this is with all tools, pretty much everything you do in here will have a small little box that pops up. And these are different settings you can change for what you just did. I just created a cut, so I have loop cut and slide setting. I can change the number of cuts right now, and it will evenly place them for me. I can change the smoothness, which I don't think that really does anything right now, to be honest. Oh, that's cool. I actually didn't know I could do that. That's really handy. See, look at that. I learned something. You can change the fall and the fall off of that smoothness. That's pretty cool. I actually didn't know you could do this. Very cool. Actually. Anyways, you can also make sure that they're even, or you can flip them. I'm not really sure what flipping does, to be honest. But a lot of these things will have little tooltip. Yeah, that doesn't seem to be doing anything to me. For example, here, I'll show you another option for when those things pop up. If I add in, say, a torus, okay? Oh, here. Let me delete everything so I just have the torus. If I bring the torus in here, I now have settings for the torus. It'll pop up like this. You can change the amount of segments that are around it. Make it, way more high poly or lower poly. You can change the segments around the loop of it. You can also change the radius of it. You have a major radius, which is the outer radius. And then you have the inner radius, which is radius of here. Oh, it looks like the major radius is actually the center point of here from the origin center. Whereas the minor radius is the size of the hoop itself. Then you can also adjust its location and its rotation. You can align it with the world or the view or the 3D cursor. You can generate UVs for it, which is something that I'm not going to go into right now. Exterior, you can change the dimension mode to exterior, which is, it basically scales it from this point outward all the way around. And then you have the interior radius, which is from here, here. That, like a donut, right? Speaking of donuts, I highly recommend looking at the Blender Guru's tutorial for how to make a donut. He will go over some of this stuff, plus a lot more that I'm not going over. Now, in edit mode, you have other tools too. Knife, I almost never use, but you can select somewhere and you can create cuts along things. And then you hit enter to apply that. Now I can select all these faces right here that I just made. I can delete only those faces. Right? Somebody took a weird shaped bite out of that. Something. I screwed it out because it has a fucking knife sticking out of it or something. Speaking of extrude, did we skip to that one? Okay, so extrude. If I take a face, and I click on extrude, I can grab this little fucking plus line right here and drag it out. It will create faces as it lifts up the face I just selected. But where I originally selected it, there is no longer a face here. It is empty area. Now the face is still here. If I delete all these, face is still here, but it's not here anymore. Now that can be done with multiple faces at once if you want. The hotkey for extrude is, I use hotkeys almost constantly. You can also extrude along a specific axis if you want. Global Z, X, Y. And lock it so it moves on X and Y and the Z's just like the other tools. Lots and lots of things you can do. So here's a good example. If you create a plane, right? And you extrude a plane, now have a cube. Yeah. And if you bevel all edges of a cube, you have a ball. Awesome, right? You can also add in, there's two different kinds of spheres. There's an icosphere, which uses triangles like this to make a sphere. You can increase the amount of subdivisions it has to make it much smoother if you really want, or not so much and auto smooth it, which will appear to be round, but look, it's not actually round, which is better for performance. Then same thing, you can change the size of it and location and rotation. There's also the UV sphere, which squares instead of triangles. Except for up here, triangles here. And it's only on the bottom and top that it has triangles. Everywhere else is squares. And just the same, you can change the amount of segments around it, or the rings vertically on it. Look at that, cool little shapes. Then you can change the size of it, location, and the rotation, which is fucking cool. Now, back to the cube here. In edit mode, there's a few other tools that you can use that I don't really use any of these except for the edge slide, to be honest, which is very cool. If I want to move this edge closer to this edge, but I want to make sure it stays the same elevation as this edge right here, I want it to stay lined up. If I use edge slide, I can drag along that edge, make it closer. So if, say, this were up here, I can't move this along the x-axis, or sorry, the y-axis, because it's gonna not keep the same angle. But if I edge slide it, it slides up that edge all the way up there. The hotkey for this would be double tapping G. G is grab, double tap G is edge slide. You can also edge slide vertices. So vertice, there's 3 edges attached to this one. I can slide along that edge, or this edge, or this edge. Whichever edge I want. Now you can also edge slide faces, and it will slide along all edges attached to that face. And if you go the opposite way, it slides on its own edges and becomes smaller. Now there's a shear tool, which basically you can take a face and kind of rotate the face, essentially. This can be useful in some scenarios. I don't typically use it, but it makes sure to keep it what's called planar. Like this face, even though it's got weird angles and stuff, is flat. It is a perfectly flat face. Whereas if I were to rotate this, come on. This is still flat, but now this one's not. This one's got a bend in it, which is not good. We don't want that bend. This is called, I believe this is called an n-gon. It is not a planar. The non-planar face, sorry. Planar face means it's flat. This is non-planar because it's no longer flat. So if I were to clean this up and choose split non-planar faces, you will see a cut go all the way along this. Oh, look at that. It actually cut the other way. Fix it. Now this is a flat face and this is a flat face. Now there's also this spin tool, which this is a weird tool. Okay, you can spin right now. If I use this blue one, it's going to spin on the z-axis only. And it's going to spin whatever I have selected. This face right here, if I have this face selected. It's kind of like extruding, but it extrudes and rotates at the same time, so it creates a lot of faces to it. Now I can do, let's say, the Y. Here we go. There's the tools for it. I want the Y-axis instead of Z. And it's currently going from the 3D first. Do it this way. So I can spin this object. It's a little weird doing it with a face like that. Shouldn't be done that way. Probably be better to do it something like this. But I don't know. It's a tool I don't typically use, but there are some really good uses for it. What else? This is better, I think, as an edge, to be honest. If I take this edge from here, should curve right around. Make a nice cone. But we also have a smooth tool. Never used it, don't know what it does, to be honest. Actually, I have no idea what it does. Yeah, not sure what that's actually doing. Yeah, shrink and flatten, which is kind of like scaling. But, I don't know, I think it's a weird relative thing. Some of these tools, pretty much from like about here down, I don't typically use. They're very, special case use. But just about everything up here, except for annotate, measure, add cube, and transform, I don't use those. Now, let me delete everything here. And I will show you a real quick scenario where I would maybe make some stairs. If I have a flat object right here, right? I go into edit mode. Say I want this to be a platform. So I'm going to extrude this up and I'm going to scale it. I'll scale it and not be making it taller, just making it wider. Now it's a big platform I'm skating on. I can use a loop cut and I can say I want, I don't know, make it a 5 stair. Okay. I can now select all these faces and I can extrude them out. There's some stairs. You can do it this way. This works. Typically, I wouldn't do it this way because, I don't know, maybe it's just not the way I do it. But that's one way you could do it. You could also do it by adding in extra cuts. Yeah, let's add in some extra cuts. And slide them up. And now I can take these faces and I can, instead of extruding them, I can drag them out. There's another way you can do it. You can also go back and get rid of all these cuts real quick. Alright. Another thing you can do is delete the bottom face. I don't want it there. Say I have this edge right here. This bevel tool you have, if I bevel this, down in these settings, I can change the profile type custom, and I can change the preset step. And then if I increase the segments, you'll watch it creates stairs for me. Change the width of them when you do this. And there's a stair set. Now here's another way you can do this. Let me start it. Okay, pick a plane. Oh. Get my cursor back at origin. Here's a plane. If I edit this plane and say make this object about, I don't know, about that long, this is going to be my stair, right? And I'm going to move it up a little bit. And I'm going to take this one edge and I'm going to extrude it down. If I take this right here and set the origin to geometry to origin, now it's centered very well. I can go to this little wrench tool right here. These are called modifiers. You can do a lot of things with modifiers. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but there's a lot of things you can do. With this, I'm going to create an array. Right now, you can see it duplicated itself here. Let me go back to normal. There we go. Not normal. There we go. Normal view. It duplicated itself. And you can see here that I can only manipulate this one. The array has added another. I can add 3, 4, 5, 10, however many I want, right? Now, right now, it's moving it along the x-axis, which is the wrong way for me. So I want negative x-axis. Now it's going the right direction. But I also want it to go on the z-axis by -1. Now, this just duplicated it, one of itself over, one of itself down. If I increase the count, it now increases the amount of stairs for me. And I can just keep doing this. And if I don't like, maybe I think these stairs are too long, I can take this face, I can move it over. I can shorten the length of every stair at the same time. Or I think it's too tall. And maybe I don't like how sharp this edge is, and I want to bevel it a little. It bevels it for all of them, except I'm making stairs here. There, now all the stairs have a nice little edge bevel on. So, you can do a lot of things like this. If I wanted to, I could also add another array on top of this, where I want it to go... Sorry, no, I can do, I think, the y-axis one. Nope. Yeah, it needs a secondary array. Now, I can do 0 on the x, and I want 1 on the y. Now it puts 1 next to it. Now I can decide, I want, I don't know, 10 stair sets. 19 stair sets. And all I gotta do is adjust this one single one right here. Any adjustments I make to this one affect all of the others. These are amazing modifiers to have. So I do things a lot with this. Like, for example, I can create a plane. I can rotate it. I want it to be straight up and down like this. I'll scale it and make it longer. I can take some loop cuts, which is Control R. Alt R? No, Control Alt R? No, it's Control R. There we go. Yeah, Control R. Put a cut here. And let's give it, like, I don't know, that many, right? And then I'll lift this up and maybe do that. So, I don't know. Got maybe I got a rail like this, right? This is the shape I would want my rail to be. Okay? I can take this modifier, I can add what's called a wireframe. And what this does is this takes every edge I have on here, now inverts. Instead of this being the mesh, the edge is the mesh. It is the wireframe of that plane I just had. If I look at this closely, you can see it's got like a weird kind of V shape going on for each frame. If I select boundary, it encloses that. Now it's got square shape, but it's diagonal. And I don't like that. So what I can do is also add another modifier called a bevel. And this will round it out. Now one bevel makes it square. If I start adding more, starts rounding it out. I don't like how thin it is, so the wireframe, I can change the thickness. I can make this much thicker. A nice thick rail, right? Got a handrail right here. If I think this looks too plain, and I also would like to add a loop cut, say like this. Going back to object mode, I now have a wireframe all the way through this. Now this bevel, you can see it smooths it out. In object mode here, I can do the shade auto smooth. Do that. Now I don't like these corners. On the bevel here, this angle, you can tell it how much angle you want to actually bevel. Right here is really ugly. If I increase this, you'll watch those start to disappear. And it becomes much sharper angles, those corners. This is how I make a lot of rails, but there's other ways to make rails too. I can also take a plane, and I don't know what I just did. I just did something. Anyways, in edit mode, I can grab an edge and extrude up. So I have this here. I'll slide this in slightly so it's not quite vertical. And then I can bevel this. Now I have a quarter pipe. Then I can extrude straight back from here. Extrude down. I can select all these edges, and then I can press F, which is a fill. That does not work. Right. So right here, I have a problem. Right here, I have two edges overlapping. This is a problem. So if I want to fix this, I can select all, and in Mesh, I can clean up. Merge by distance is taking any vertice that overlaps, and it will merge the vertices together so that they no longer are separate vertices. Now there's only one there. So if I retry that faces, oh, I see what the problem is. Got this and this selected. Nope. Maybe I can only do one at a time. Maybe that's the problem. Yeah, I can only do one at a time. There we go. Now we got a face. Face. Quarter pipe. Now, say I like this quarter pipe, and I want to make it into like a bowl or something, right? I can delete these faces I got here. And I can use modifiers again. I can use that same array I had before. It's only this little piece, but it'll create duplicate. Now, something cool I can do with this is those curves I was talking about. If I add in a curve, a Bezier curve, I can change this array modifier instead of a fixed count, like I give it a fixed count. I can tell it to fit a curve. So the curve I want it to fit, if I use this little pin dropper thing, I can select this curve. So now it's going to fit the length of this curve. If I edit this and there we go. If I say make this longer, it's going to take the same length of this. Look here. Length is the same. Now, if I also add a curve modifier, I can select again the same Bezier curve, but I might have to select up here. If I select that Bezier curve, and now I go in and edit this curve, if I say press E to extrude, add a new segment, and I go like this, it's still going to follow the length, but if I instead go on the y-axis here, it's going to curve and follow it. Now I can rotate this to curve how I want it to curve, then I can scale it, smooth out that curve. Now I can take that itty bitty little piece, look here, this itty bitty piece is all I made. But I can now make an entire bowl out of this. I can make a segment out of this, and now I have a full bowl. Smooth out the corners, rotate them how I want them, smooth them out. There's the bowl. I don't like the shape of it. I can adjust it however I want. Go. I like this bowl, right? Anything you want to do. Then if I think something's not right about it, maybe I need it to bevel more, I don't know. I can select the mesh, go back through. I can just manipulate this little bit. Like I want it to be higher poly. So I'm gonna bevel it a little more. that beveled the entire thing. I can also say, oh, you know what? I want coping here. So I'm going to add coping. Clean up to merge these things together because these two faces were separate. Select these edges, bevel them to a nice little curve. Right, now I got coping all the way around. Very interesting things that can be done. I think that's about all I'm going to show in here. If any of you guys have any extra questions, let me know. Obviously, I showed you some things that you're probably not going to know how to do right away, but I more so just wanted to show you that these kinds of things existed, and you can do a lot more than just moving edges. If you have any very specific questions, like how would I make a, I don't know, something, you know, how would I make a pyramid that has like a quarter pipe on one side? Feel free to reach out to me and I can, you know, kind of show you an idea of maybe how I would do it. But there is no real right or wrong way to do it because you can do things many different ways. Like, here's another really quick example. If I take this whole edge, separate it, and rid of these modifiers on it, I can take this object and just like before, say I want this thing to spin. I can use this spin tool right here. I can spin it on the z-axis, and look at this, I made a round bowl. I don't like the amount of cuts in it. I can increase the amount of steps, smooth it out. Look at that, there's a bowl. Many different ways to do things. So feel free to reach out to me if you need anything. And I hope this kind of helped.